Hey folks, it's Wishy Christian here. Can I give you guys a Iraq Dinar update? So over the last couple weeks, many of you already know, Iraq has been kind of crazy. The focus has been put back on Iraq. And, are we about to find out how deep the corruption is in the central bank of Iraq? That's what we're getting ready to find out here. There's been so much money that has flowed into Iraq with contracts and oil and currency auctions. They've had the money to do what was needed to be done to restore Iraq. So let's just go back a little bit in history, just over the last few weeks, and see what has actually taken place in Iraq. Now, of course, many of you already know China signed a multi-billion-dollar oil deal with Iraq. And that's pretty big. This particular deal actually allows Iraq to get paid up front for their oil. This should help Iraq, but we already know that Iraq is going through a lot right now, and they're not able to. You have all the issues dealing with the salaries, how much money they have left in the reserves. There are so many issues surrounding Iraq, and Kadhimi, in my opinion, he's not for the people. If he was, things would be different. So what I'm getting ready to get into is really Iraq is being squeezed right now. It's being squeezed from every direction, and whether something pops out of this remains to be seen. And the Dinar RV has been elusive. There's been time periods where it could have revalued, it should have revalued, but it didn't. But in this article here, as we go back in history to look at what's been happening over the last few weeks in Iraq, China signed this multi-billion-dollar oil deal with Iraq, right? So this should help out the Iraqis. So I just want to touch base with you on what China is doing when it concerns oil. It just seems like they're just consuming and consuming and consuming and consuming oil. And this article just was released, and they are just taking in all this oil. And it says here, China's imports from the United States soared 13-fold. Saudi Arabia regained its ranking as China's top supplier. The shipments up 43% from October. And it says here, Saudi Arabia and Russia are in a tight race to become China's top oil supplier in 2020. So it says here that the number 3 supplier, Iraq, shipped over 5 million tons to China, or 1.24 million barrels per day, with volumes in the first 11 months totaling over 56 million tons, nearly 21% above the year ago level. China took no oil from Venezuela. And of course, South America used to be part of supplying oil to China, but because of the U.S. sanctions, they're not able to. So China is just sucking in all this oil, with Iraq being China's number 3 supplier. So you can see that there's a lot of potential with Iraq when it comes just to their oil. And this whole situation should bring them out of, some of their situation, right? They need it. But guess what? In exchange, that China's going to demand. They're going to demand backing politically, stand up to the Western world, and all that. That all comes with it. But one of the other things that, of course, that happened recently is that we know that we have the central bank devalued their currency, right? And it's caused all these problems, right? So that did take place. The price of the dinar, it costs a lot more dinars to get a dollar. So when I did talk about, that is good for investors. It's good for those who are investing and you're trying to get as much as you can. But overall, I think it's a good sign because you're seeing all this turmoil going on in Iraq. And maybe this is what is needed to shake things up. And I also said that the Central Bank of Iraq would be put back into the spotlight. So, and then, of course, the next series of events, there was the attack on the U.S. Embassy, and there is warnings of retaliation. We have not seen that yet. So that remains to be seen as far as what will take place. But over the last 24 hours, the U.S. military has increased its activity over Iraq to respond to the potential Iranian attack. So there's a lot of things still going on there. Kim Clement talked about Iraq and Iran and the United States and all that, and so we still look for some of those events still to take place dealing with Iran. And then, of course, the squeeze is starting to come with all the military, with everything that's going on with the military. And then you had the attacks, the president making his pardons concerning some soldiers that were involved in an incident that led to the death of some people. And so he made those pardons, so there's even more of a squeeze. And we already know that the true colors of the Iraqi government, the people, those who are in power, when sometime after the election, we saw what was really taking place, right? They really don't care about the Iraqi people. And then, of course, now you have Iran cuts the gas flow to Iraq. It threatens further reductions. And it all has to do mostly with, the $6 billion debt. How are they going to take care of the $6 billion debt? How much more oil are you going to have to produce to pay back all these loans, to pay your people on a daily basis? It's getting absolutely insane, and it's getting crazy. So in a way, when you look at this from an investment point of view, having all this turmoil, in my opinion, I think it's good. I think this is just part of the whole thing with when this thing breaks, it's just going to be like a pregnancy, right? And nothing. And then suddenly, you go through your first, your second, your third trimester, and we're at that point where this thing has to, in order for Iraq to survive, they got to have that breakthrough. So there's like I said, there's still a lot of issues. How can they afford to pay Iran and then turn around and pay their workers and pay their government employees and all the other things that the government does, reconstruction, all this, and all they talk about is just continuing to borrow money. And that's what we're doing here in the United States. All these stimulus checks, we're just borrowing money from the Federal Reserve, the central bank. But that goes to the next point, because now we are finding out, I think we're getting ready on the verge. I think we are on the verge of finding out what's really going on with the central bank. And I'm going to go ahead and go over this article because it's going to detail some of these things that has been going on. And this is the reason why Iraq cannot move forward. This is the reason why the Iraqi people cannot move forward, is because of what's going on with the central banking system in Iraq. That is part of the problem. These are the people that are supposed to be flipping the switch. These are the people that are supposed to be raising the value, right? And they have this independence thing that's going on. They can devalue the currency. They can revalue the currency anytime that they want. So I'm going to go ahead and go over this article. And this is pretty big news, right? This should send shockwaves throughout the Dinar community. This should send shockwaves throughout the whole banking system and what's going on. And I think this is going to lead to other banks, other central banks. It's just going to be this continuous thing. But this is the thing. It depends on what is found, what all is found, and it depends on what their actions are going to be. Because people in Iraq, government positions, people that were involved in the banking system, central banking system, they're all getting off scot-free with all the corruption that's going on. So it says here, Iraq Central Bank under investigation for alleged money laundering. Country Supreme Judicial Council also probing allegations of involvement in terrorist financing by Central Bank of Iraq, along with 13 private banks. This is huge. This should cause the Iraqi government to take over the Central Bank of Iraq. I mean, this is just absolutely crazy. Let's go ahead and get into the article. Iraq's Supreme Judicial Council is investigating the country's central bank and 13 private banks over alleged involvement in money laundering and terrorist financing operations, lawmakers and officials have told the Middle East Eye. In response to a parliamentary probe that ended last month, the council is understood to be investigating cases of custom and tax evasion, potential fraud in connection with foreign exchange auction run by the Central Bank of Iraq and the 13 private entities. And look, folks, we already knew that. We've known that for a long time with the auctions. When I got familiar with the Iraqi auctions, and I looked on a daily basis for many years, going back all the way from the very beginning, all the money that has been dumped into the central bank in Iraq is still in the same position. A statement issued by the Supreme Judicial Council on Thursday said that the Russia Investigation Court, which oversees the cases of integrity, money laundering, and economic crimes, has decided to bring in the directors of the banks for violating the procedures of the anti-money laundering and terrorism financing law. The statement did not mention any details of the violations or the names of the banks involved. However, the Parliamentary Finance Committee revealed the existence of suspicious operations concerning officials in the CBI who were reported to be aiming to exploit the foreign exchange auction. So I'm going to go ahead and skip a little. This particular article will be down below in the description. It says right here, the game is that these private Iraqi banks gave false invoices for fake goods. In other words, there are no goods for the money deposited outside of Iraq. This is money laundering, as the source of this money is unknown or illegal. The CBI has to investigate the invoices and impose fines, but the CBI has stopped checking bills since 2016 under the pretext they are not responsible for this matter. So for the last 4 years, it's been unchecked. The operation is deliberate. The CBI is ignoring the step due to bribes and political influence in order for the money laundering process to take place properly. The investigative committee revealed that the period from January 1st to September 1st had seen the transfer of $27 billion out of Iraq while receiving no more than 3% of its custom revenues. All right, I'm going to skip a little bit more. According to custom instructions, the merchant who imports goods from abroad must pay 15% of the value of goods as customs, meaning that the annual customs revenue must reach 15% of the value of the sums transferred outside Iraq in dollars when it was transferred under the pretext of importing goods. The custom revenues that Iraq is supposed to get are 15% of the value of the amount that was transferred, that is $4 billion. The actual receipt is only 3%, or $418 million. That means over $3.5 billion is missing. That means that's a rate of waste reaches 12%. Where did this go? Until last week, the CBI used to buy $1 at 1,182 dinars from Iraq and then sell to private banks and financial transfer offices for 1,190 dinars. Lawmakers and bankers told MEE that the private banks would then sell $1 to the final beneficiary price of 1,250 dinars, a difference of up to 60 dinars per dollar. The daily profit from this operation reached 11 million, while the monthly profit reached 220 million, while the annual profit reaches 2.6 billion. The only beneficiary of this operation is a group of private banks. Neither the government nor the citizen are beneficiaries of this process. So there we go again. We just have a lot more corruption dealing with the private banks, the central banks, the Central Bank of Iraq allowing this to happen. And this is actually a lot deeper. And they think that a lot of this money is used to fund certain operations. Who knows where most of this money is going to? The article just goes to continue to go on about the liquidity crisis and the devaluation and all that. But the focus is back on the Central Bank of Iraq, which is a good thing. And we knew a lot of these things were happening. And this is the hope that we have, that whatever corruption or whatever that is going on in the Central Bank of Iraq, that it's rooted out. And they have to move quickly. All these things are going with the Central Bank of Iraq. It seems like it's just moving slow. Investigations of corruption and all this and that. We've been hearing that for years, and yet still nothing has happened. Now, you remember with the FinCEN files, if you guys remember back when the whole banking reports and all the different banks that were involved, and possibly even American banks that were involved in financing certain operations in Iraq, back when they were taking over a third of their country. So, and I've talked about that before. And so this is really a bigger problem, and it's a problem on a level where, the central bank is supposed to be an independent entity, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're doing whatever they want to do. It doesn't matter if it harms or hurts the Iraq's economy or has an impact on the world economy. They just want to keep Iraq where it's at so they can keep sucking the life out of Iraq, so they can keep sucking the money out of the Iraqi people for their own benefit. So, folks, the squeeze is on, and hopefully that we will continue to hear more news about the Central Bank of Iraq. Now that they are back in focus, I don't know how the United States Federal Reserve System is going to respond to the Central Bank of Iraq. The squeeze itself is a major financial squeeze. They're going to have to do something. They cannot keep borrowing their way out of the situation. And hopefully we will see Iraq leave OPEC. Hopefully we will see the oil prices do rise, the price of the barrel rise. We're still looking for another $10 to $12. But folks, with everything that's going on with the world, and not only that, what's going on here in the United States, and mostly everybody knows how important the President of the United States position is on the world scene. And we saw what happened when Iraq finally recognized that possibly that we could have a different president. So now they're showing their true colors, right? So they're going to go right back to what they were doing. Nothing is going to change. But now they're feeling the squeeze, right? I mean, the President of the United States can try to squeeze them as much as they want. With everything, with the corruption and the protests and everything else, really this whole situation dealing with Iraq, I think if most of the Iraqis understood what we understand, I think they'd be 100 times madder than what they are. Like I said, the squeeze is on Iraq. Let's just hope the pressure continues, the pressure of the corruption being exposed, and the pressure from this president and everything that's going on with Iran. Let's just hope that this continues to build up the pressure on Iraq and force them to do what they should have done a long time ago, and that's to revalue their currency. Anyways, folks, I thank you for listening. Leave a comment, leave a like, please share. Stay safe. God bless. And with that being said, Twisha Christian out.